Hello and welcome to TechBrain channel. In this video, I'll be demonstrating how to use MongoImport as part of your digital transformation strategy. Let's suppose that you have data that's in CSV and you'd like to transition to using the document model. And as part of that transition, you've picked on MongoDB as the database of choice. I have a CSV file that contains just over 100,000 data points. So what I'd like to do is to import this into MongoDB. So this might be the first stage of my digital pipeline. What I'd like to do after I've imported this data is that I'll enrich it with vector embeddings. So the file is data entry 2017.csv, and that's part of the Kaggle dataset for X-ray images. So let's examine the contents of this file. So I'll do a cat data entry CSV, and I'll do a grep, and we'll say something like so this is what the data looks like. So each data point represents an image, a diagnosis, there is an age included, the age of the patient, patient ID, and some metadata about the size of the image. What I'd like to do when I import this data is to actually take the image and compute an embedding. I would like to use this data as part of an AI-powered computer-assisted diagnostic tool, medical diagnostic tool. So one of the things I'll need to do is to take each of the images and produce an embedding. I'm yet to decide on the embedding model I will use. I'll do a video on that, but this is the very first step of that pipeline. So this is my MongoImport command, and my MongoImport command lists, amongst other things, the database as well as the collection that the data will be saved in. I'm having to state the type of data that I'm importing. MongoImport will support CSV. It also supports JSON as well as TSV. So here I'll have 10 insertion workers, so you can set up the number of insertion workers, so at least that speeds up the actual upload. I should also remember to add the header line option so that the first line in the CSV corresponds to the headers or the fields that I'll be using. So I will press enter, and it's connected to my database. So I'm currently using an M0 free tier. So while that's happening, I can actually take a look. So I'm connected to my database using Compass, and that's the data that's come in, and you can see the fields. So there is image index, is essentially the name of the image. The plan is to compute a vector embedding for each of the images and provide some sort of image similarity feature. So you have an X-ray, upload the X-ray, and then we find out, or we try to find out what the diagnosis might be. So we'll see how successful we might be at building that sort of application. So what else can I do apart from just uploading the data? So this is where I can actually continue my ETL journey. So I'd like to do some sort of transformation to the data once I've imported it. So what you'll find extremely useful in that activity is being able to use the aggregation framework. So rather than reading this into the application and then performing the heavy lifting there, what we'll do is write a pipeline transformation, or the data transformation that we require. So I could say that I'm interested in a particular age range from this data set. We can see that we've got the patient age being given here, So the pipeline that I'll write will try to focus on a certain demographic. So I will want to match only certain documents. So I'll say something like patient age, and the patient age has got to be greater than 30, greater than or equal to 30, and dollar less than or equal to 50. So this is the first step in my pipeline. So I do a match. I want to build an index on that. As you can see, if I do an explain, it is going to tell me that there is a call scan. So call scan is the equivalent of a full table scan. So I definitely want an index on that field that I'm referencing, in this case the patient age. So if I look further in here, it tells me that it's examined all the documents in the collection, which is not great for performance. So for this image, this is the diagnosis associated with it, and that's the patient, then there's a patient ID, and so on. It is possible for an X-ray to contain multiple diagnoses. So I think we can see an instance of that happening in this particular case. For this X-ray, with that image identifier, there's been a diagnosis for a mass as well as a nodule. This will prove difficult for me to process. So what I'd want to do is to actually split this up into an array. So I'll set a new field where I try to say something like diagnosis. So this diagnosis is going to be an array. So I will use the $split aggregation expression, and what I would like to do with that is to say this is what I'm splitting, so I need to give it the field that I'd like to split. In this case the field is called let's find that field, it's called finding labels. So that was the original field name coming from the CSV. So finding labels, and what would I like to use to split? So I'm using the pipe, and if I now look, this is what we get. So where I have multiple diagnoses, like for example this one here, this is what I'll get. So it's an array of the diagnoses. So consolidation, infiltration, and so on. So that's the first step in my transformation. So just to be clear, the data that I imported hasn't changed. It's just the data that's passing through these through this pipeline that is changing. Okay, so I want to get a sense of how widespread each of these conditions is. So I have this array. Sometimes I might have many items in that array. So what would help me with the grouping is if I could actually unwind the array. So I'll do an unwind. So I'm unwinding the diagnosis field. So unwinding will essentially flatten the array, creating one new document for each entry in the array. So that's what I'm going to make use of, and that will make my grouping a little bit more meaningful, because at the moment the grouping is not behaving as it should. So I take the diagnosis field, I then unwind it. So unwinding array fields. So it says that in this data set, no finding, diagnosis, these are all the images that relate to no finding, i.e. somebody's healthy, there's actually nothing wrong with them. And when it comes to plural thickening, these are the associated images. Okay, so this is easier for me This makes it also easier for me to visualize what's going on in the data. If I'd like to plot the data, I could actually perhaps rewrite this as a view and then provide that as a data source. But this classification will help with the testing later on. So the last thing I'd like to do, just to see how this sorts, is to add a sort stage. So we'll add a sort stage, and the sort stage is going to be on which value. Okay, so the sort stage is going to be on this value here, total. So we'll say total, but in descending order. What is the least common condition in this age group for this data set? So it's going to be in descending order rather. So hernia is the least common element for this age group. So that was a little demo on how you might be able to do a digital transformation. So you have your source CSV data, you're trying to get it into MongoDB. MongoImport is going to help you to do that. And once your data is in MongoDB, you can then do additional transformations using the aggregation framework. So everything I've done here in Compass can be done from the command line. Okay, so hopefully you found that video useful. So what we did was to transform CSV to JSON using MongoImport. So until next time, remember to like and subscribe for more great content from the Tech Brain channel. Bye now.